Welcome to Have You Seen This? The world's only podcast about obscure, overlooked, and misbegotten visual media. All discussions will be spoiler heavy. You have been warned.
It's Jen.
And Tim.
And we are going retro tonight with a favorite of both Jen and Tim's. Tim, do you want to tell the audience what we're talking about today?
Yeah, this would be probably the third or fourth time that we've mentioned it, but it's come up in previous shows before, and so suddenly we're like, well, why don't we just cover the single perfect season of The Adventures of Brisco County Jr.?
The Adventures of Brisco County Jr. with Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, 1993, or I guess
1993 to 1994.
It was
lead-in series for the X-Files.
Yeah, back to back. That was Friday night appointment viewing when I was an impressionable teenager.
So set the scene for us. It's teenage Tim. You're like about 15 years old. You're real skinny. You're kind of angry all the time, but not as angry as you'll become.
Right, yeah. I had my anger training wheels on then. But yeah, I spent a lot of time on the computer, dialed long distance to get on AOL, had 3 channels, so Fox was one of them. That was, the fancy new exciting network. As we covered earlier I forget which episode it was, but we'd mentioned earlier that Fox's origins were very urban.
Yes.
It was kind of the wild young startup, opposite ABC and NBC and CBS.
Yeah, and it really was considered a crude interloper because its programming, as hard as it is to believe now, was considered very, let's say, boundary pushing.
Yeah, I mean, Simpsons, that was, the antithesis of The Cosby Show. Married with Children, same story. Mm-hmm. You had In Living Color, which was a black sketch comedy show.
Yeah, it was. They only had, 2 white people on it.
Yeah.
Fucked up.
I don't even know what happened to one of them, but... But yeah, so we're bearing the lead. We're filling time. I just want to get right to the point. Brisco County does in fact hold up. It holds up 25 years later. Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It is as good as we remembered it.
Because we would always evoke it on the show as kind of a high watermark of television for us in our formative years. And the thing is with high watermarks of media from your formative years is that often you'll revisit them and you will have moved on in maturity and interest. Whatever.
Yes, that is a very delicate way of putting that sort of creeping cringe feeling of revisiting stuff from your childhood.
Yeah, and for example, the other show that I absolutely loved in 1993 was The Nanny.
Okay. Herman's Head for me.
Yeah, I know people, I never watched Herman's Head, so I can't say, but I have gone back and watched The Nanny, and no disrespect to Fran Drescher, who's a goddess, we all love her, but, I mean...
Yeah, the hostess with the mostess.
I love her, she's
Bobby
awesome.
Fleckman. She pretty much invented that character, so...
Yeah, the flashy little gal from Flushing, Queens.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but... The Nanny is a really terrible show because most sitcoms are terrible shows.
Yeah, well, you didn't know at the time. I mean, you were a teenager, media moves on, I'm sure the stuff that we love now, we'll look back in 20 years and be like, how the hell did we accept, this and that? Even there's a backlash on Rick and Morty now. People, they're doing the same tricks, but what seemed really fun and inventive at the time, people were like, oh, this is just cynical. This is just pissing in our mouths.
Maybe it just went on too long, which luckily did not happen to Brisco County Jr., but we'll get to that.
Right. Yeah, it was the lead-in for the X-Files, and the joke that I would keep, mentioning just to establish the context is I would watch, Brisco County and X-Files back to back every Friday night and be like, I can't wait for the next season. It's too bad this X-Files show is getting canceled.
Now, what I actually said to Bruce Campbell, my close personal friend, Bruce Campbell. No,
Bruce, yeah.
It was at a signing for his autobiography, If Chins Could Kill.
Yeah.
I told him how much the show Adventures of Brisco County Jr. meant to me, that I loved it. I loved watching it, and I actually would watch the show and then, okay, cool, bedtime. Didn't actually start watching X-Files until like third season, I want to say, maybe a little earlier. But, so I said this to Bruce Campbell, like that I watched your show, but I did not watch the X-Files. He was like, well, unfortunately, like the rest of America did it the other way around.
The opposite,
but
yeah.
I appreciate it. Very nice guy. And fortunately, he's since, I think he's carved out his legacy, safe to say. He's...
Yeah, the boy's done all right for himself.
Yeah, he's appeared in enough stuff that that his image is kind of like a nerd hero.
Yeah, he's kind of a niche cult character actor.
Thank you. I don't know why I couldn't just say those words, because that's
right.
like a really easy way of putting it, but, that's my brain.
I'm sure someone would disagree whether or not he is leading man potential. I mean, he was the lead in the series. He's the lead in the Evil Dead movies.
Oh my God.
Make that case for it.
Evil Dead 2 is like one of my favorite movies of all time, and like one of my favorite Bruce Campbell performances. Like, he just really like turns it up to 11 in the movie. And I mean, it's a Sam Raimi movie, so everything's kind of turned up to 11.
Yeah,
like one of the funniest movies ever.
Yeah, and one of the weirdest things too about watching Brisco County is that Sam Raimi is in no way involved, but you feel like he should be.
Yeah, you're watching it and you're like, where's Ted Raimi?
Right, yeah, it has that same kind of madcap, freewheeling, kind of funny action style to it.
Yeah, and it's something it's a tone which has become more threadbare, like, in the years since. And I think it did kind of wear on the show a little bit, like, as it moved through its first and only season. But I mean, it's still pretty funny. Like, I think that kind of winking, self-referential, like anachronistic jokes, things like that, those have been pretty beaten to death by now. But I feel like in 1993, it was, especially for network TV, it was still like a pretty fresh approach.
Yeah, and that's what's really refreshing about this, is because at the time you are getting an earnest presentation of these sort of anachronistic, kind of winking, knowing references in the show. But this is before it had become really like self-congratulatory and kind of like cynical, where it's just like, oh, this is really tropey. Yeah, or we're gonna hang a lampshade on it. It's like there wasn't any of that like kind of postmodern irony to it, where it's just like, yeah, this thing that we thought is really cool, we're putting this in the show and we aren't even gonna address it.
Yeah, it was before hanging a lantern on it had become annoying. It was pre-Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Right, yeah. That's where it kind of got, weaponized. It kind of got overdone to the point where it's like ironically, it's like the audience needs to have things pointed out to them so that they can then be congratulated on recognizing the thing. Brisco County doesn't insult its audience in that way. It just lays the thing out and trusts you're going to get it.
Yeah, because every joke that they make, which is anachronistic in nature, it's kind of it's do it and they straight. Move on.
Yeah, it's played straight, so it isn't like, isn't this stuff so hokey? Like you're gonna get with like a Joe Whedon joint or something. Something that's like trying to be kind of too cool for the room. Right, and
the earnest tone has helped quite a bit by the fact that it is like a good guys versus bad guys show. Like Brisco is he's a heroic guy. He's always doing the right thing. He's fighting some like pretty ruthless villains. And I know that the show has been criticized for that, for being, well, like by the kind of people who say these sort of things, like, AV club writers and whatnot, like, oh, it's like, it's so earnest, like, it's very like, oh, like the good guy always wins and the bad guy always, and it's like, I mean, it's fine if you don't like that kind of material, and like certainly in 2021 you might be looking for something different in a contemporary television show, but by like 1993 standards, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for, like, the thing that's, like, the opposite of the opposite of the opposite. It's like, have I blown your mind by how many, like, times I've twisted this, staid narrative into something completely unrecognizable? And it's like, no, just play it straight. Just play it straight and do it well. And I think that's what the strengths of, Brisco County are.
Yeah, no, sorry, finish.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, in terms of kind of a straight-ahead hero with a wink, like when you watch the pilot, I was reminded so much of Indiana Jones, and there's like a direct line from Indiana Jones to this.
Right, yeah. There are so many... one of the things, too, that I love about it is that it is jam-packed with so many other things that, like, different kinds of media that you just love. And yeah, like you made the point, I think one of the writers worked on... I think Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
It's a Jeffrey Boehm and Carlton Cuse show, and they both worked on the...
Yeah, one of them has, like, some amazing writing credits, like the Lethal Weapon movies, for one.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Jeffrey Boehm adapted The Dead Zone for Cronenberg. That's cool.
Yeah. it's a nice feather in your cap.
Ooh. He also rewrote the screenplay for Lost Boys.
Yeah.
The first Lethal Weapon was written by Shane Black, but Jeffrey Boehm wrote the sequels Lethal Weapon 2 and Lethal Weapon 3.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then he wrote fucking Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Okay, yeah, that was... I damned him with faint praise. He wrote one of the 3 Indiana Jones movies.
Oh, and he and Carlton Cuse, Cuse?
Mm-hmm.
Cuse?
Cuse is probably right.
Carlton Cuse. I want to say Cuse because I like saying Cuse.
I know. Well, being one, you should know.
So his partner was this Cuse, who's a regular fuck machine. I'm talking morning, night, afternoon, dick.
That is not what Like a Virgin is about, but I appreciate your enthusiasm.
Yeah, only Quentin can do Quentin, if we're being honest.
Just as well. Yeah,
Carlton Cuse worked with Jeffrey Boehm to develop the stories for Lethal Weapon 2 and 3 and Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. So through that partnership, they also developed this show, The Adventures of Brisco County Jr., which explains why the pilot especially is very Indiana Jones. And like, this is a killer pilot. Like,
it is
great fucking pilot.
Yeah, it is incredible. And even knowing the the Indiana Jones lineage, it doesn't feel derivative because I think it brings so many new and interesting things from so many different sources that it feels original in its own way, even if you recognize the influences. It doesn't feel so much like Stranger Things that we've regarded before as a pastiche. It is like we take a little bit from here, we take a little bit from there, but kind of it's a Frankenstein where all the seams are showing. I don't get that from Brisco County. I think that it has subtle influences that make this gestalt that is greater than the sum of its parts, because not only do you have Indiana Jones influences in there, I mean you have like we talked about earlier, you have the two female love interests in this, and they're kind of set up as foils as the good girl bad girl. There's kind of a James Bond angle to it. There's an earlier Wild West show, The Wild Wild West, that has that blend of
Robert Conrad and the other guy, or if you're younger, Will Smith and Kevin Kline.
Right, yes. Yeah, and that blends westerns and sci-fi, which is a natural fit according to the showrunners. They're like, we loved two kinds of serials, and the serials were serial movies, not breakfast cereal, and they were sci-fi or westerns, and they're like, these are chocolate and peanut butter. Put these together, and you got a great show. Also, given the background of the Brisco County character, he's a little bit of Sherlock Holmes. So you have all these great pulp heroes just rolled into one, and you got Brisco County.
Yeah, and because when this show came out, I was about 13 or 14, so not the most sophisticated viewer. I mean, I was kind of in my fat larval form. I didn't shut up about the Beatles, like, ever.
So kind of like the way
beginnings.
You are now, yeah.
But I have shut up about the Beatles.
You've said all there is to say about the Beatles.
Yeah, but young me really went for the show in a big way. I loved this show. I watched it religiously. But the interesting thing about reflecting on my younger self as like a viewer of media is like how unsophisticated a viewer I was. And I can't say that like, oh, I was like totally ahead of the crowd on like liking the show and understanding like what made it a really strong concept and a great execution. No, I just was like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, it's got action and like, oh, there's an orb. That's weird.
Yeah, you didn't know that it was a brilliant blending of Western and sci-fi and action and adventure elements, but your brain did.
Yeah, and I, as a teenager of that age, like even just my media interests were like barely starting to coalesce. Like I wasn't like the genre fan that I am now. Like I don't know if this kind of helped that along, because you know, when I went to college and, you know, got in the science fiction club with a bunch of other nerds, a whole bunch of them were like, oh man, Brisco County Jr., that show was so great, and they just canceled it. Of course, I later lost respect for those people when they all went in a big way for Firefly.
Yeah, nobody's perfect.
The inferior synthesis of Western and science fiction.
I mean, anyone who likes Firefly their time would be better spent watching Farscape. I'm sure there are fans who have room in their hearts for both, but I do not. I have a cold black heart.
Yeah, and let's be honest, the number one Farscape stan is on the show, and it's Tim.
Right, yes. I know of what I speak.
Yes, the man of superior taste. But the man of superior taste was also the teenager with very good taste, because he was watching Brisco County Jr. and The X-Files. Like I said, I came to The X-Files kind of late, but did become a devoted fan of that show. So, you know, genre fandom wasn't far off for me. Like, my best friend and I loved it so much, we actually went to a fucking X-Files convention in Burbank.
Nice.
Yeah, the formation of young nerd gen.
There wasn't much for me, so I mean, I had to make do with a Red Dwarf fan club in the Bay Area that consisted of about 6 people.
Well, because you were living in, we'll say, roughly Central California?
Nowheresville, yeah, that works. Right.
Yeah. So, we were closer to LA, so, you know, we all had a few more options, and also I think both of us had cable TV, so there was that as well.
I didn't. No.
This show had a kind of a second life in reruns on TNT, I believe. But yeah, only one season. In spite of the fact that Fox put a huge amount of promotional muscle behind that, because they thought that this show was going to be the breakout hit of the 1993 season for them.
And in a way, it is kind of Jodorowsky's Dune, of some genre elements, not just because, you know, you see that kind of genre mashup after that. This is sort of the saying that, you know, Ridley Scott had about making Blade Runner. Whether you're ahead or behind the curve, you've got the same problem. So I think Brisco County, like, you know, as pat and it may be, I think it was just ahead of its time, because, you know, this is, you know, 1993, you know, 1999, Wild Wild West, the movie, comes out. 1999 is also Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Right. Also 99 too is when you start seeing steampunk show up. So Brisco County is kind of it's sort of the prehistory of this sort of steampunk retro adventure revival, the kind of this like pulp revival.
I think it continued what Wild Wild West had started in the late 60s, because that show is also considered a forerunner of steampunk, which I won't hold that against it.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, you can say that it is well a forerunner. It's about 30 years early. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that about Brisco County, because that was the my first exposure to it, is that because of that I have an infinite amount of patience for steampunk and even the Will Smith vehicle Wild Wild West. It is because they remind me of the show that I loved so much as a teenager that I'm like, yeah, that's probably what happened. It's that same Hudson Hawk justification where it's like we just throw a bunch of wild shit at you and just kind of bluster our way through it and be like, this is the world that we're creating. You're like, yeah, okay, I'll roll with it. It doesn't make any sense. It's completely ludicrous, but you're like, yeah, okay, sure, yeah, I'll fuck with that.
I am usually the last person who is rehabbing major blockbuster films of the 90s. I'm a curmudgeon. I know a lot of people love stuff like The Mummy and Independence Day and whatnot.
Right.
Not my flavor. I'll just say that. Not my fucking flavor. But Wild Wild West, while at the time it did seem like a huge lumbering mechanical spider joke of a movie, if you go back and watch it, it's not that bad.
I don't have a problem with it as just like an adventure story. I mean, it's
silly, but
yeah,
I've seen dumber, and like I especially remember Kevin Kline being like really funny in it because it's fucking Kevin Kline.
Yeah, Kevin Kline brings it. I mean, he is he can do no wrong because of his supporting role in A Fish Called Wanda, basically. So yeah, like I watch it for that. Salma Hayek is in that, looking great. Kenneth Branagh is chewing the scenery, and at that point I'm like,
Branagh. That's right. He's got like he's like a steampunk cyborg.
Yeah, it's got weird machines in it, and you're just like, yeah, okay, why not? This is that kind of movie I know what I'm in for. M. Emmett Walsh is in a small role. Yeah, it has a lot. It has all the reasons that I go to see, what our circle of friends regard as a Tim movie. It's like, oh, it's got all the elements that I like. It must be a good movie. It's like, oh, sweet summer child, you don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, I mean, the unfortunate thing is that Wild Wild West is known by, that Kevin Smith anecdote about writing
John
Superman
Peters
movie.
finally getting his giant mechanical spider.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but,
well, good for him.
Yeah, but I mean, because, of the goodwill from Brisco County, I'm like, I will go to bat for Wild Wild West. I will, nod my my bespectacled, cog hot glued derby to steampunk.
You nerd.
Right. Well, yeah, it's because the problem though is that I think a lot of it, maybe it kind of, I don't know, creatively ran out of steam.
Oh God. You son of a bitch.
But yeah, like there are a lot of interesting ideas. There are a lot of ways of like making kind of, retro Victorian notions of, current technology. Like that to me, it's a fun idea.
Yeah, but it's just, kind of at this point in time, I'm really sick of things set in the Victorian era, and I'm saying that as a big fan of the Sherlock Holmes stories and the Jeremy Brett adaptation that ran on PBS.
Right.
I still love Sherlock Holmes in spite of, like, we know he's a misogynist, like, white British man, but, like,
and a dope fiend.
Those, well, hey, like, our views on addiction have evolved since 1890, so...
you gotta have a way to unwind sometimes, I don't know.
With cocaine!
Yeah.
Injected cocaine, like, my man was hardcore, too.
Yeah, he's the Iggy Pop consulting detective.
God, imagine if Sherlock Holmes had just been like blowing rails instead of injecting cocaine and hanging out on his couch. That's so funny. But I still like that stuff. It's just that, the Victorian era is a little threadbare. And I don't know if maybe the fact that the Western genre was going through a little bit of a lull at the time may have hurt Brisco County Jr. because the way it went for the show was, like I said, it got a huge push from Fox. They really thought it was going to be huge, and it did get an enthusiastic audience with the pilot and quite a bit of critical acclaim. The critics actually were on board for the show, which is nice. Of course, there are always going to be people who don't get it, but
yeah,
whatever.
I mean, I loved it. It's a great serial adventure. I love how different the tone is. And remembering what else I was watching at the time, it just seems so head and shoulders above just, in terms of quality and in terms of innovation.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, Fox really believed in the show, but the problem is that as the season went on, they just kept losing viewers, and it certainly had a very hardcore devoted audience, of which, you and I were both part of.
Yeah, and those people went on to, read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and, cosplay at Steampunk at Comic-Con for what it's worth.
People did love the show, but it just wasn't doing the numbers that Fox wanted. Plus, it was pretty expensive to produce, so it got the chop. We only got one season of it. They wanted to... Well, let me not get ahead of myself. The point I was making is that it's really hard to pinpoint why this show didn't take off when it's such a strong show. And like I said... the Western genre was in a bit of a lull in the 90s. Sam Raimi, who had nothing to do with the show, really tried it with Quick and the Dead, which it has its boosters, but...
It's its own unique thing.
I love Sam Raimi, but that is not one of his that I'll go to bat for. It's just not a very good movie. Like, I'm sorry.
It's got, a young and fashionable, Russell Crowe.
Yeah. He is so good in it. You're like, who is this guy? He is going to be a huge star. And then he did LA Confidential, and here we are.
And you're like, that's who this guy is. It's got, our favorite actor, Gene Hackman, being himself.
Who apparently was like a real handful on the set.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and in fact, I went back and looked at Bruce Campbell's autobiography, which I mentioned earlier. He does have a chapter on Brisco County Jr., and in fact, he describes it as his favorite role of his entire career. So
I can totally buy that, because all these characters seem so, like, they're so textured and so much fun.
Yeah, such that he has said, like, hey, I'd do a follow-up if, somebody put up the money and resources for it. And in fact, last year they did have a reunion of the surviving cast where they did like a table read of the pilot. Sadly, we've lost a few of them. Julius Carey, Lord Bowler, rest in peace. R. Lee Ermey, who played his dad, which I fucking forgot about.
Yeah, but I mean, that is perfect casting as well.
He's so good, too. He's like really fucking good. He can do more than just be like a fucking drill sergeant.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, getting back to the
good
kind of
cast.
critical reception, like I said, in spite of having lived through the era, I'm having a tough time figuring out why the show didn't land. And I don't know if it's, people were like, you got your Western and my sci-fi. Like, I don't know.
It is the most, like, baffling thing about us revisiting this is, like, why was this show not more popular? Because it, like I mentioned, it does have everything in it. One of the things that I didn't get to list, among Indiana Jones and, Sherlock Holmes and, the sci-fi Western is that they also pay lip service to, like, kung fu movies. Like, you have James Hong in there.
Yes, like, David Lopan.
Yeah, exactly. They're just like, I know we had touched briefly on, Quick and the Dead, and also had, great genre actors in it. Lance Henriksen and Keith David. But but then this, not only do you have, Bruce Campbell who's carved out, a great career for himself, but, you've also, John Astin.
Yes. I forgot he was in this.
Yeah. And the heavy that I feel like we've kind of are building up to, because
deservedly. Yeah.
Because like his portrayal in this, like, cast my impressions of him ever since, and that is Billy Drago as Bly. He is forever this villainous leader of this cowboy gang, John Bly, and I've seen him in anything else, no matter how many Cynthia Rothrock movies I see him in. I'm like, oh, it's fucking Bly.
Yeah, and I'm saying this was absolutely no disrespect to the rest of the wonderful cast of this show, with the exception of that Coos who plays Dixie.
Right? Yeah, you don't like her.
Billy Drago is, I don't want to say he's acting like on a level like above TV, because that's not quite it. It's just that his portrayal of Bly is so menacing,
yes,
and makes you so ill at ease that it really stands out.
Yeah, it's a brilliant performance of just this like cold-hearted, dead-eyed, villainous cowboy. I mean, to put it in modern terms, and by modern, I mean a movie that came out 6 years later, he's kind of the Agent Smith, of Brisco County, because he just, he has such a commanding presence, and he steals every scene that he's in, just because he just has this like reptilian nature about him that just is so off-putting.
Yeah, and he knows when to play it kind of low-key, and he knows when to ham it up.
Yeah. So I think that partly, because I still have, burned into my, 15-year-old memory of what was, the final scene of them finally defeating Bly, because I remember it being just like so mind-blowing to my teenage self of seeing this, and just remembering just in my mind how this character is he was like a television boogeyman, basically. Like
he's so sinister.
Yeah, the stature of him as a villain in my childhood memory at the time had made had been so huge that he cast this such a long shadow. I'd say the only other one that even held a candle to that would be that Lamprey man from the X-Files. But
ooh, yeah.
See, the only other one that you can pick out off the top of your head.
But the episode that fucked me up the most of X-Files was the one with the hillbilly family that they didn't broadcast again because it upset people so much.
Oh, is that the one where they were gonna kill Scully? And,
I don't
eat her or
remember. I just
something?
remember I had a hard time sleeping that night.
Was that where they kept the mom under the bed?
Yes.
Oh yeah, that was
God.
that, yeah. Oh, I didn't know they didn't rebroadcast that one, because funnily enough, I remember that one vividly as well. I guess I was traumatized.
Yeah, that one fucked with my head heavy. I was so scared. And it's a brilliant piece of television. Honestly, I'm way overdue for a rewatch of X-Files. And I'm not I don't hold any anger toward it for kind of winning the race while Brisco County kind of went into the bin.
Yeah.
But I still have all these episodes of Brisco County to catch up on. Now, how many episodes did you watch? Because I think both of us managed about half of the series.
Yeah, I think I got through about half of them, and this is kind of to undercut my point. My initial plan was, as I do with some stuff that I have to revisit. I mean, I can't sit and watch 40 hours of TV for for an hour and a half of podcast, much as I would like to.
That'll cut into my napping time.
Right, yeah. I have a lot of
you expect me to just turn off B-movie TV?
Right.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I know I got two eyes. I haven't trained them to watch two things at once, but...
You're going to turn into a chameleon, man. Your eyes are going to move independently of each other.
Yeah, I'll be like a dolphin. I'll turn off half my brain so I can still watch TV while I sleep. Yeah, so I wasn't able to get through half of them. Usually what I do is, if there are highly rated episodes on... on like IMDb. Like
that
I'll
was
pick
my
those out.
system.
Yeah. Or I'll start with the beginning and the end because I'm like, okay, the beginning that sets up everything, and then the end, that's where they finally defeat Bly.
Yeah,
Hang on.
as it happened, like I don't know. Do you wanna blow that reveal, or should we save it?
No, I mean, may as well get to it.
Well, the way that I did it was, you had mentioned over text, you were like, I do not have time to watch 26 episodes of the show. Like, I'm going to watch the first one, and I'm going to watch the last one. And I was like,
this isn't Netflix where they do, like, 8 of them and you're good.
Yeah, like, this is
real TV.
Yeah, this is a full network TV season. If it had been on Netflix, we would have gotten 2 seasons, and then they would have canceled it before the 3rd.
Right, yeah. Which, I mean, I guess that's fitting.
I still haven't watched the rest of Mindhunter because I'm so pissed about them canceling it.
As you should be.
Yeah.
They don't have time to nurture anything worthwhile.
Yeah, fucking bastards. But anyway, so my thing was, I was like, I'm going to take Tim's advice. I'm going to watch the pilot, and then I'm going to watch the finale, which is a 2-parter. The pilot is also technically a 2-parter. I ended up breaking that because, like, I did have a little bit of time, so I did what you did, and I was like, well, what are the best ones on IMDb? And I managed to grit my teeth through a couple of Dixie heavy episodes, but
it's not a fan.
Like, I basically stuck to the episodes that were rated above 8.
Yeah, and I mean, an 8 rating is good.
Yeah, and I realized that it's probably like Stans going there and being like, oh, this is fucking awesome, because like, I don't know if I entirely agree with some of the ratings, but it's not like I had a horrible time, except when I had to look at Dixie, so it worked out.
Yeah, and the way that the season is constructed is that there is kind of a through line of his not rivalry, but is him being on the trail of Bly, but then it is also episodic where it's like, they blow in through a new town and there's some problem that they gotta solve.
Yeah, and like he's chasing down the individual members of Bly's gang for the most part.
Which is such a solid premise for a series. To be like, 12 gang members, that's 12 episodes right there.
Yeah, and they managed to get some pretty amusing recurring characters out of these guys, like they'll all have their own like little stories and quirks, but basically the setup is that Brisco County Senior had captured the Bly gang. Unfortunately, they get the drop on him, and they also long story short, they also come into possession of an orb.
Yeah, that is the MacGuffin that they get right into, and the MacGuffin is already affecting the story. And I love what the orb brings to it, because it is one of those things that it is, it's kind of like the Force. It just kind of does whatever it has to when you need it to.
That's a good MacGuffin.
Yeah.
It's not like, and they even hang a lantern on it a little bit by having Lord Bowler say at one point in the series, like, I'm really sick of that damn orb.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, I mean, he never liked it, like, as a character. But yeah, it just kind of does whatever. And then it's one of those things that's like, here's a couple of things it'll do, and then we'll figure out what its deal is later. And I don't know if it's just synergy or if it is, Brisco County informing my creative process, but that is totally the way that I run Adventures. Like, that's the way I'm running Traveler right now. I'm just like, here's a piece of something, it did a thing, I'll figure out what it is later.
Yeah, I mean, as the jumping off point for a whole season of stories, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it holds its own. Good for it. Also, the thing too that they refer to it as what is unearthed, like, foreign object, and the guy's like, "Look, that's too much of a mouthful. I'll just put the initials on it," and it's like, well played.
Yes, that's the kind of show it is.
Yeah,
and one of the strengths of this show is that they have a good supporting cast. For Bruce Campbell is the hero. Yeah. You have, as we mentioned, Julius Carey as Lord Bowler, who is a rival bounty hunter, and of course, like, it's one of those situations where there's tremendous antipathy at first because of their rivalry, but as the show moves on, they develop a fast friendship. Brisco is also supported by his liaison with the highest echelons of the U.S. government, a lawyer named Socrates Poole. That's Christian Clemson. Mm-hmm. Interesting thing about my reaction to the show is, did you have to read To Kill a Mockingbird freshman year of high school?
No, I can't read.
You've all heard Tim's horrible secret.
Yeah.
You know why he watches B-movie TV all day? It's because he cannot fucking read.
I watch the movies. You don't have to read, you know?
Yo, what up? It's Tim. I'm 42, and I never fucking learned how to read.
Never needed to, yeah.
Well, I read To Kill a Mockingbird in freshman year of high school, and I had not seen the definitive movie version of To Kill a Mockingbird, which of course stars Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch. For whatever reason, as I was reading To Kill a Mockingbird, I pictured Socrates Poole, like basically that guy as Atticus Finch.
Hey, yeah, that works. I mean, he fits an archetype.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because, like, if you watch To Kill a Mockingbird with Gregory Peck, I mean, like, it's fucking Gregory Peck. Like, it's an all-time performance. Like, yeah. He's really great. Like, he's the guy that you want to be your dad. Right. But as a teenager, I was like, I didn't picture this guy. I was picturing Socrates Poole.
Yeah, give me a good one.
But Christian Clemson is, like, a really good foil for Brisco because, you know, he is, like, a fussy nerd.
Yeah. He's a dork.
Yeah. But not in a grating way.
Right. Yeah, he's the anti, Brisco County, like he doesn't, he doesn't solve problems with his fist, he doesn't, carry a gun. He's the sort of civilized type.
And going back to Bruce Campbell, the really good thing about Campbell is that, he is almost leading man material, but there's something like, and this is not maligning him in any way. Like, it's just the fact that he's like, he's good looking, but in a slightly off kilter way. He's got like his eyes are kind of close set. He's got the pointy nose. He's got like, the famous chin.
Yeah.
He's masculine, but he's not absurdly macho. And also he has like a kind of easy sense of humor. Like, that's kind of how he's made his bread and butter, is being kind of like the funny male lead, less than like the serious male lead. And it really does drive the show. And I thought of this when I was reading kind of a retrospective review, a kind of stupid and shitty missing the point review from Surprise, the AV Club, from like 2014, where they knocked the show for being another white guy saves the day kind of show. But the thing about, and obviously there's like a lot we could say about that, but the thing about Bruce Campbell is that he isn't just like, like some dumbass white guy.
He doesn't like blunder into things and just like, tell people what to do.
Well, and if he was like...
That is so not the case.
If he was like too good looking and too macho, it would like completely blow the balance of the show. Like, because he's obviously like, a man of action and like capable, but it's kind of that like little bit of off-kilterness and like that sense of humor which keeps him from being insufferable.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you want that in a lead.
Yeah. I mean, like if you just cast some like regular leading man type, like the show would not have worked as well.
Yeah, and I think that's partly one of the things that I noticed too about because Jane, you had made the point earlier about how the show is filled with a lot of memorable minor characters. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that is the one that I would like to single out for acclaim is Pete. I don't know what else he goes by,
Pete
but
Hutter.
He's the guy who's really particular about his pistol, about his piece. His piece, yeah. And one of the things that I see like kind of this like jokey, ironic TV do currently is what the A Club is incorrectly criticizing about Brisco County is that a lot of the time the people who are foils are just like completely powerless. And it's something that you see Joe Whedon do a lot, where it's just like they're always like one step behind. They don't have that plot armor. Where it's just like you're just a punching bag, you're a rube, you're constantly, underfoot. But and that just seems like such a grating kind of power fantasy to me that it's partly what I dislike about Joe's work so much, is that it is such a blatant one-dimensional sort of getting yours back on like the school bully kind of thing. It's like it comes from kind of this like revenge place that I think is really inherently mean-spirited. But,
yes, that's a real sorry, like, do you want to finish your point? Because like I have a thing to say about that. But
oh well, I mean, yeah, like you can say your thing about it, but the thing that I find so endearing about these minor characters, in particular this Pete character, is that he's not a buffoon. He is overwritten with an abundance of depth, and I think that is really amazing because this character doesn't need to have so much texture added to him, but they put it in there. And even in even the behind the scenes stuff, like Pete gets killed off like twice and he comes back just because
he's
they
like
love
the
the
Kenny
character
from
so
South
much.
Park before Kenny from South Park.
Right, yeah. He gets like shot in the head with an arrow. He gets killed by like these like Chinese like ninja stars. And they do kind of address that later. Like later, because I remember because I just watched it, and he's like, "Didn't you get killed by Chinese Death Stars?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, that's the thing about Chinese Death Stars. They kill you, but then an hour later you feel better again." It's like, oh my god. But yeah, it's that kind of stupid joke that they don't like even. It's kind of in the same way that like Police Squad doesn't like give you time to like, they don't like lean into like the camera and like stare at you waiting for you to get it. They just kind of toss it off.
Yeah.
It's just a stupid joke. It's just like, yeah, it was a stupid joke. We said it. Move on. And that's what I like about this Pete character, is that he's not this buffoon. He has his own kind of past and depth and dignity. And that I feel is missing a lot of the time from these like throwaway foil characters. That's like, they're just some dipshit that always loses. And yeah, like unfortunately I can't think of any examples of that because I don't commit to memory things that I hate.
Well, you raise an interesting point, and that's kind of what I wanted to bring up. And I know I'm the one on the show who's really hard on nerd culture.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that I am absolutely a nerd.
Yeah, anyone's seen you.
Yeah, like I can't get around that. I can't pretend. It's just that having been a nerd for my entire adult life, I've had a lot of time to get really sick of a lot of the crap in nerd culture.
Right.
And one of those things is something that you bring up, which is, it's like a real sickness in the work of Whedon. And I really feel like it's also what enabled him to be like a really malignant presence while pretending to be like Mr. Woke male rah-rah girl boss feminist.
You're feeding fans that junk food that they don't realize they want but is not good for them.
Well, it's that meanness. It's that like, I was a fucking nerd and all the jocks beat up on me, but one of these days I'm gonna show all those fucking jocks. Where it's not
it's spiteful.
Yeah, it's not kind of a mature, like a growing maturity and realizing that those times are past, and
it's not being the better man. There's still like this axe that you have to grind, and it comes out in his work.
Yeah, it's not moving forward with maturity, leaving the past behind, realizing that the world is always going to have shitty fucking people in it, and a lot of the time they're going to get the upper hand just because like they have the advantages. And it doesn't mean that you just lie down and take it, but you get a kind of like equanimity, and that is what gives you the power to fight these malign influences. And it's not just writing really puerile power fantasies where like a teeny tiny little girl that, you know, you could break in half over your knee is like beating up monsters or like 47 opponents, which is like, you know, that's like fine occasionally, but you know, like looking back at kind of like the legacy of Whedon, you know, you really see how like fetishistic and like, yes, like how like you know, like revenge based and punitive it is.
Yeah, punitive, definitely a good word to describe that. And I mean, I would continue with my analogy of it being junk food, is that you don't realize that it is, you know, it tastes good, but it is ultimately bad for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I like that there are characters that have, you know, that have dignity and strength in this show, even if they are kind of like joke characters or they're, you know, or they're foils. Like that is kind of the history that you see of, or the progression that you see of Bowler's character, because he and, you know, Brisco do not start out liking each other. And Bowler has kind of his chip on his shoulder about Brisco County Sr. because he was such a hotshot that, you know, Bowler could scarcely make a living. Because, like, there's the guy who was just, you know, knocking it out of the park all the time. And, you know, Bowler as a bounty hunter, a career bounty hunter, he's just like, I can't even make ends meet because this guy's, you know, stealing all my, he's catching all my bounties. So he's got that, you know, that chip on his shoulder about it. And you kind of see that about his characters, that he's, you know, he's coming from a disadvantage. And, you know, he's scrappy and he has to work harder than Brisco. You know, this is a guy who, like, every time that they're, you know, on the trail of any of Bly's gang, you know, Brisco is there because he is on a stipend. Like, he's funded. You know, he has these 5 robber barons propping him up. You know, as long as he expenses everything, he's not, you know, he's not any worse for having tried. Bowler is doing this because, you know, he needs to make a living doing it. Like, he doesn't have, you know, money to fall back on if he doesn't, you know, get these bounties. So you see him as this kind of more desperate character, which is, you know, easy to kind of make light of because he's at odds with Brisco in the beginning, but then as they go on adventures together and as they go through, you know, some tough times, you know, a grudging respect is formed and it's earned. And
yes.
that's
Sorry.
partly why I respect Bowler's character so goddamn much in this.
And they also kind of allow him to, like, get his bag, like, toward the end, you know, because he's able to buy a house and, you know, get a butler and a crystal.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not, it is comfort food, but not in that kind of, like, sickly way that a lot of, like, nerd bait is today, where it's like, well, we don't want anything bad to ever happen to anybody because, like, it, you know, it really makes me frowny face.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I don't want to see anything negative.
Yeah.
And so you end up with, like, really sterile and infantile media.
Yeah.
It's earned. It's like, no, you know, like, Bowler's been through a hell of a lot. Like, you know, he deserves that house.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just not only that, but like the character design too of him. And some other things that the show is light. Brisco is, you know, he's the white hat hero. I don't think you see him shoot anyone, even though he carries a gun. Like, it isn't like, because one of the things, you know, looking at the Wikipedia for the Wild Wild West series is that it got canceled despite high ratings because of concerns over violence that were of course unfounded, but, you know, the ends justify the means, I guess.
Yeah, I actually did not know that about Wild Wild West, was that, you know, it was hounded off TV for those exact reasons, which is very funny in retrospect. Right,
yeah, of all things. Yeah, that's a whole topic for another time. But yeah, Brisco is, you know, as I said, he's the white hat hero. You know, he could easily just, like, shoot any of these guys at any point. I mean, he carries a gun, why not? But then even you see, like, in the early episodes, like, he's making efforts to save, you know, people who are trying to kill him. Like, even, you know, to not only just, like, to collect the bounty, it's like he's not just, like, shooting this guy because he can. Like, even when he's fighting a guy underwater who tried to drown him, he tries to bring him back up. He's unsuccessful, but you see that ultimately he's trying to do good things.
Yeah, to the point where like he won't even like take the opportunity to just shoot Bly when he could.
Right. Yeah. And I'd gotten off topic because I was originally talking about Bowler, because Bowler is a bounty hunter, but just like from his character design point, you can tell a lot about him. Not just it's interesting. Oh, I know what I was talking about. It is a light show. We don't see our hero gun anyone down in the same way that one of our leads is a black character and it is 1890.
Right. And
certain topics are not addressed.
And the thing is like, there absolutely were like black and mixed race people in the American West.
Well, yeah, also because like the majority of cowboys were non-white,
yes.
Partly because being a cowboy is a tough fucking low status job.
Yeah, and that was something which has been sort of, forgive me for using the term, like whitewashed from Western genre stuff. It's, the movies and TV shows which kind of like set the standards have a hell of a lot of white heroes in them.
Yeah, and that is a successful whitewashing. This is something that you don't even consider when you see white cowboys. You're like, of course, white guys.
Yeah, but, originally they were vaqueros.
Yeah.
But white people are too stupid to say vaquero, so they say buckaroo.
Hey, close enough, partner. Hey, they can't even say the T in partner. So, yeah. So yeah, it is never touched on the unpleasant, racial situation of the 19th century in which a free black man is able to come and go as he pleases. But the great thing about it is that it then does not act as a I don't know, it does not weigh the character down, because it is just assumed that he is of course a character of this on the same level as Brisco County is.
Yeah, and it's not as though they ignore how the American West was built, because the pilot opens with Chinese
on
workers
a chain gang, yeah,
in shackles, who are able to escape through the power of the orb.
Mm-hmm.
So it's right there in the pilot.
Yeah, but that is one of the things that I appreciate the most about Lord Bowler is not only is he isn't denigrated, to what was kind of the prevailing attitude at the time. I mean, hell, he has Lord in his name, which already you're like, it's kind of the pendulum swings to the other end of it, where it's like, maybe is this guy above my station and you don't realize it?
Yeah.
So it can kind of mess with your head a little bit to be like, this guy that I could just take, I could judge him at face value and be like, oh, okay, like I know what this guy's background is, but it's like, no, I'm not Mr. Bowler, I'm Lord Bowler. And like, holy shit, this guy can buy and sell me. I didn't even realize that. So yeah, that is interesting. That his real name is, I think, in a Native American name. The way that he's dressed is very distinctive. He has a bowler hat, which is appropriate. He wears Union pants. He has the cavalry stripe. Like, he was a cavalryman before becoming a bounty hunter. There's so much history to this character.
These are some very good and astute observations, Tim.
I was really taken with the show at the time. I hope to talk about it 25 years after it airs.
Well, here we are.
Yeah.
Slow burn. Yeah, and kind of what you mentioned about the a lot of care being given to the minor characters.
Yeah.
It's such an asset to the show that it's kind of a shame when they start to lose the plot a little bit, like toward the end of its only season. Mm-hmm. Now, the way that it worked out was that the production was able to get a resolution for the Bly/Orb story, but that did not come at the end of the series. For a reason that I'm like half remembering, I think because the status of the show was up in the air, it was kind of like, we don't know if we're going to be able to do a full season. Like, so let's wrap this up. And then, oh no, we got like a full order. So shit, we got to come up with some stories to like, and to fill it out. Yeah.
And in the writer's room discussion, they're like, oh, we got an order for 5 more episodes. Now we got an order for 2 more episodes. And the writers just being like, God, I can't do this.
Yeah, it's like, so you can see like this is pretty brutal, and it does kind of, that's where the seams start to show toward the end of the series. Like a few of those episodes I haven't revisited. Like I said, I did view the 2-part series finale, which is still like a fun ride, and it's a satisfying enough resolution of the show. I mean, like Brisco and Bowler basically like ride off, and there's the implication that their adventures will continue, and like that's that, as a fan, that's satisfying. The cheesy humor starts to wear a little thin in the final episodes. I mean, like there's a character who acts like Elvis.
Yeah.
Which is like I don't know how funny that was in 1993, but like in 2021, it's like, ugh.
It's good it's good sparingly. It's good like in doses.
Yeah, it's and of course this is a show which derives a lot of its comedy from anachronism, so it's like, okay. But then as you mentioned, like the very amusing character of Pete Hutter, when he's reintroduced in the series finale, like they lean pretty heavily on like gay and like prison rape jokes. Like, and let me be upfront, I fuck with a lot of really offensive humor. I'm like, hey, I don't care. Like, you can joke about rape, just make it fucking funny. I don't give a fuck. Like, giving Pete like an apron and like a huge fat black cellmate, and then like a joke about how like when he left the jail, like, oh, as soon as I could ride again, I blah blah blah. It's like, oh, haha, see, it's funny when men are getting raped. Like that's good shit.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I read that differently, but I was taking this kind of a Rashomon thing where it's just like, let me tell the story the way I believe it to have happened. But yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, because I mean, there definitely is because there a lot of the humor in the episode. This is Pete giving like a deposition and like a court martial, and he does play it up like he comes in with his own Bible, and he talks himself up as like yes, I am a villain and I've done many bad things, but like so, and that's funny. But yeah, like the way that the scene of Bowler and Brisco coming to meet him like in his cell, it's like, oh, okay, right. Well, yeah, 1993, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, I think that like they do earlier, where they don't linger on dumb jokes and just saying when I was able to ride again, and then not spending any time on it. I don't know. I think that's fine. I think that they spent an appropriate amount of time on it. But yeah, you could say it is kind of a one note. It is, the one joke to be made about life in prison.
Yeah, and my thing is that if like the writing of the show hadn't started to get a little threadbare at that point, like it would have been something that I could wave off a little easier. But like it was they were starting to lose their grasp of the formula at that point, and I don't know if it was because it's like, oh, we need to fill out the rest of the season. Like apparently at the end of the season there's also an episode where like Brisco and Dixie and one of the other characters have to take care of a fucking baby. Right.
Well, yeah, that's look, you're making 20 odd episodes a season. You're gonna have things like this.
Yeah, and I know that like and like I try to keep my point of view, like I try to rein it in a little more with television, because like I'm not a TV person, like I'm a movie person. Like my true love is the cinema. I'm very fucking pretentious, but like like with TV, you have to accept a formula, and this show is formulaic because, like, yes, they're doing a takeoff of like old serials. Like, TV has to fit into an hour. It has to hit certain beats at certain times because you're going into a commercial, and then you got to wrap it up when you come back from commercial. It's like, I understand that. And for most of the season, like, Brisco County, like, does that, like, pretty well. And the season finale didn't, like, it wasn't, like, outright trash. It was just like, the wheels are starting to come off a little bit. Just probably because of the nature of the production, like, not knowing, like, where it's going to end exactly.
Yeah, if you thought you were going to do, 18 episodes and then you end up doing, 27 or however many. Yeah, it's like, hey, I know that your act is over. Can you do just like another 10 minutes? And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you dig way back in your material that you're not really doing anymore because it's kind of hack at this point. But
right, yeah.
You need something.
Yeah, so if maybe there's another framework laid out, then yeah, it could have held together better. And to your point, Jen, about like the later episodes kind of not holding up as well as the earlier ones did. I thought, because I watched the beginning episodes and then I watched the last episodes, and I'm like, they're mentioning that they already defeated Bly once. When did that happen? Because my teenage brain, well, the last two episodes, the two-parters of them defeating Bly, and I remember, the secret with the gun. They actually do set that up. They make the gun significant. Like, they mention it a lot of times in the episodes. And that is also, pro tip for the GMs listening, is that, you take it from the Alexandrian. If you want your characters to notice something, mention it 3 different times in 3 different ways. That's how your characters will pick up on clues. Otherwise, they'll get lost. And they do the same thing with the gun. They have multiple people mention the gun in different ways so that the gun is important. And it does turn out to be halfway through the season.
Yeah.
Because that's Brisco defeats Bly in like episode 18.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like randomly in the midst of a bunch of other shit. Yeah, in the midst of a bunch of like episodic sort of, Dame of the Week things. It's like, oh yeah, then we wrap up the story with the orb. And you're like, hold on. There's 10 more episodes. What happened? So you can understand my confusion when I go back and watch the ending of it and Bly shows up again. And I'm like, I have a particular, distinct memory of the defeat of Bly just because of, him being just such a snake and such a villain throughout this whole thing, that to relish his defeat and all these, plot points that had been threaded throughout the previous episodes, that those had all paid off. And then I'm like, oh, that actually happened 10 episodes ago. Just like, all right.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Yeah. So I don't remember the series quite as well as I thought I did.
I gotta be real. Like, I told you over text, I forgot 99% of the show.
Yeah, I remember Brisco. I obviously remembered Bowler. I remember Bly, because he kept me awake at night. And I remembered Comet, and that's it.
Yes, Comet, who was actually played by 4 different horses.
Yeah, I didn't even remember the orb. I mean, I remember it was a thing, but...
Yeah, I remember the orb, but I was like, yeah, the orb did something. I don't even remember what it did.
It did stuff.
I did remember how much I fucking hated Dixie.
Wow, okay.
I hate
flames
Dixie
on the side of your face
so much.
Yeah.
And going back to revisit the show, my frame of mind was, you know what, like, it was a different time. It was young, snotty teenage me, probably like didn't have a lot of use for romance because that's gross.
Yeah, that's girl stuff.
I don't want to see gushy stuff. I want to see action and cool stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm going to come to it with an open mind. And I understand that in a great TV series, a lot of the time, like, a good female foil for the male lead is a godsend. It can work really well. So let's watch Brisco County Jr. So I watched the pilot and I was like, I fucking hate Dixie.
Yeah. Who does she think she is?
Hate her. And this is the 2021 Jen talking. So this is my revised opinion on Dixie. played by Kelly Rutherford. And I don't even want to knock Kelly Rutherford as so much. I mean, she has, since then, she's carved out a career in television. I think she was on Gossip Girl, had a recurring role in that. So good for her. This was a little earlier. This was a long time ago. But she is so one note, like, especially in the pilot, where it's like, it was as if they told her, like, okay, you're the sexy one. So everything she says, like, including the double entendre lines, which could be very funny between her and Brisco, are just like, I want to fuck you. It is so tedious and leaden. It's just like, okay, I get it. You're sexy. Jesus Christ. Do you do anything else? And apparently, Dixie was supposed to be a one-time character. Like, she was going to appear in the pilot. And then they were probably, because, Bruce Campbell's a good-looking guy. Like, we're going to have him meet lots of dames because women like him. But they thought he and Dixie had so much great chemistry, and she was such a big hit with the fans that they just had to keep bringing her back. Ugh!
I can understand, like, if you aren't on board with the character, then to have them keep showing up again, you're like, this bitch again.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. Just tonight, because I had a little bit of time before we recorded, and, I want to catch the entire series, I watched the early episode in the series, Socrates' sister, where we find out that Socrates has a sister named Iphigenia.
Iphigenia, yes.
Yeah, played by Judith Hoag, who was April O'Neil in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
That is who that is. Okay, thank you, Jen.
Yes, and okay,
because seeing that cleft chin, I just couldn't. I of course thought it was Jessica Chastain. Like, she pushes everyone else out.
Yeah, she does. And there is a resemblance, and I'm like, oh well, Tim's gonna like her because she's like a real good looking.
Shut up.
But if you want to talk about chemistry, she and Bruce Campbell have actual chemistry. Like, they have a scene where they're tied up. Like, that's sexy, right? And they have to do like some heavy breathing to kind of like stretch the rawhide. And there's chemistry there. Like, it's like these are two very attractive people who like have a spark between them. There's a scene later with them by a campfire, and like sparks are fucking flying, not just from the fucking campfire. I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like, I don't know if it's. I don't know what is causing me to not see what the producers saw, where they were like, "Ooh, the spark between Bruce Campbell and Kelly Rutherford, that's good. We got to keep it." I don't fucking see it. I'm sorry. Like, I just find their scenes like incredibly one note and boring. And in fact, like, they ended up losing a character from the pilot. Like, John Astin's Professor Wickwire, he had a daughter who was going to be a romantic interest for Brisco. They dumped her for Kelly Rutherford, which pisses me off.
Well, she would be the one example of an underwritten character in this. She didn't have a lot to do.
Right, and
I don't remember how she impacts the story other than being like, oh, this is my father, mad scientist John Astin.
Right.
That's about it.
Yeah, like, like Brisco uses an opportunity to kiss her as a way of like avoiding capture. But yeah, like that, and I don't even remember the actress's name. She didn't have a lot to work with. Right. But, in the later episode with Judith Hoag, she's fucking great. I would love to see her come back. I would have no qualms about her, like, being a foil for Brisco. Like, but no. How many episodes did she do? 1. They never did another episode with Iphigenia Poole.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in practical terms, they already had a pool. I guess that's it. But yeah, you're right. She had great chemistry with Brisco. She has great chemistry with Leonardo and Raphael and the rest of them. Yeah, like, she was great, in her role, and it would have been nice to see more of her. There are a lot of great minor roles in this show. Not just her, but there are a lot of familiar character actors that show up. Names escaping me. But
I'm just thinking about how much I hate Kelly Rutherford's dumb, stupid fucking face. Like, she even reminds me of one of those Siamese cats with crossed eyes, where you're just like, what the hell is wrong with you? You should have been drowned in a sack.
Either you're on board with it or you're not. And if you're not, then to have that rubbed in your face every time is going to get pretty tiresome.
Yeah, and it isn't even like a, because there are a lot of times with shows like this where they'll have like a will they or won't they. I know people felt that with Scully and Mulder.
Mm-hmm.
But toward the end of the season, like, what do I see? Like an episode where like they're like, oh, I love you. Oh, let's get our picture taken together. As Joan Rivers would say,
Well, I mean, she's got her own thing going on. She's got her own way of doing things. Being a woman in 1890, she's kind of a rogue, but also a social climber, and being like also ran on a privately funded bounty hunter. That doesn't really play to her strengths. So like she couldn't be a part of Brisco's world. She has to kind of move within her own world, doing plying her trade. You're
talking about Dixie?
I'm talking about Dixie.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. Like, I don't have a problem with like a real dishy, sexy blonde who uses her feminine wild. Like, this isn't even like a like a lib femme thing where I'm like, oh, like, so the traditionally feminine women like wins the role. No, like,
right.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It just has a lot to do with like I'm sorry, Kelly Rutherford, with the actress and like all the way she's written, where like she's really one-dimensional. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, hey, I mean, I found, my favorite villain in Bly, and you found yours in Dixie.
And it's one of those things where, like, as a fan, like, you really feel like you're swimming against the current, because it's like, oh, this is a character and an actress that everyone else loves, and you're just like, I fucking hate this bitch so fucking much.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. And, maybe I'm alone on this. If you are a defender of Dixie / Kelly Rutherford, go fuck yourself. I don't care. I'm right and you're wrong.
the Dixie stands, yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, man, it feels good. Like, I've been holding that in for 25 years.
Yeah, I can tell. What else have we not addressed? Because I feel like that was, what Jen had to say about this.
God, I hate her
the series.
Stupid little fucking cross-eyed fucking face. I like blondes. I like sexy blondes. I don't like this one.
I
sound like Trump. I like blondes. I like blondes, folks. But this one, she's low class. I don't like her. Folks.
Not like my daughter, who I would totally fuck. Anyway.
I gotta say, Ivanka's got some tiggle bitties.
I never really stare. I try not to stare directly into the void. But
have you ever noticed that her husband has lady eyebrows?
I hadn't.
I swear he has someone pluck them. It's weird.
Of course he does. I'm sure he's very vain and shallow and stupid. My sort of takeaway from Brisco County is it is a Western. It has sci-fi elements. It has the supernatural in it. It has kung fu in it. It has an Elvis impersonator in it. It has things from outer space. It has time travel. It has so much of everything. At the end of this first season, where can it even go? Well,
here's the thing. And let me make sure that I actually have this in front of me, because there is some like okay. So this is from IMDb. They did have thoughts about where they would have taken the show if they'd gotten a second season, and this is what it says. According to writer Carlton Cuse, had the series been renewed for a second season, the The main plot line would have centered on Brisco County Jr. eventually settling down, marrying Dixie Cousins, and becoming a sheriff to a town populated by all sorts of characters with similar characteristics to many of the guest characters from season 1.
Well, better they didn't make a second season then.
I know, right? Like, I remember I was so disappointed when they didn't renew this show because I loved it. I watched every single episode Friday nights.
Yeah,
I would have hated the second season.
Right, yeah. And we wouldn't even be talking about it now. It'll be like, what happened? But yeah, I mean, they even set it up because, the initial thing that got the plot moving was, Brisco being, hired to replace, his father. And again, as an indication of, his pure white hat character is that, Brisco's hired to pick up where Brisco County Sr. left off. And someone even mentions it. You're like, oh, to avenge your father's death. And he says to continue his work. It isn't even a matter of revenge. It is about sort of like duty and upholding the law, which again, like makes him just like this really, virtuous character. But what sets that in motion is him being hired by, these 5 robber barons who don't like to be called that, which is weird how everyone just kind of refers to them as such. But that goes on until, they ultimately, catch and defeat Bly. But then, their new benefactor becomes, okay, you're going to work for, President Garfield and, basically do
Cleveland.
like Cleveland. Thank you. Yeah, it's like you're going to be this sort of extra legal arm of the government, which is great because it resets where they are, but with a new foundation for where they're going. They've ended up with the same dynamic with him and Bowler and Poole. It's just now they have a different person writing the checks, and that they're all on board for it. And you're like, great, we've set up a second season, we've progressed, but ended up kind of back where we started, and we can continue on these same wacky adventures. They can you can set up another arch villain. You can set up a villain of the week. You can have them go into all these weird episodic adventures, and it all goes from there. It all seemed perfectly set up, and that they had so many different genre elements in it that you can do a sci-fi episode, you can do a kung fu episode, you can do like a horror episode. Like one of the later episodes, the one with, again, I recognize her because I watched Herman's Head. One of the actresses from that, like she is in what I'm watching, and I'm like, this is a horror episode, just because tonally it's so different from everything else. But yeah, there's so many ways that they could have taken it. Mm-hmm. They could have kept on keeping on, I feel, but
yeah, if they hadn't torpedoed it with that garbage ass second season.
Oh
premise.
God, yeah, that would have been, and the thing too, I mean, I'm tickled and delighted anytime that someone is able to like inject sort of historical fiction into their work. It is like John Astin. Like inventing a rocket or like a diving suit or like the introduction of a tank, like 20 years before World War I. That I like that because it's sort of like, if this technology existed at the time, what form would it exist in and how would that affect things? And that's a fun little thought experiment.
Yeah, and it's baked right into the show premise because Brisco is set up as a guy who's always how does he put it?
He's I think it's in search of the coming thing.
Yes.
Like they invent an airship.
Yeah.
and even still, like John Astin's character is like, I invented an airship in a way using hydrogen. Pretty flammable, but I think it's gonna be big. Just
God, and like it.
Oh, dude.
And I know I said like in the series finale that I found the humor to, it was getting to be like a little bit hack, but the bit that absolutely murdered me was when they leave the airship and John Astin kind of turns away and says, "Oh, now I can work on that loop."
Oh, I don't get
like
it.
He's gonna do a loop in the airship.
Oh.
Which, It's one of those delightful jokes that catches you by surprise, and you have a good laugh.
Yeah.
So that bit was very good.
There are a lot of fun things like that. And
now
sorry,
I know
go ahead.
a thing that I kind of wanted to do, because you had brought up when we were discussing over text, like how singular this show was at the time. Like, how did this compare, like, to the other TV shows of 1993? Like, it really, like, stands out. So I actually found a page where somebody breaks down the primetime lineup for 93 to 94 for the major networks, ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC. And I know a lot of you will be familiar with some of these, but yeah, it's really hard to find a thing that compares to the Adventures of Brisco County Jr. because, like, you had other Western shows, like, a very popular show, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. You remember that one?
Yeah, they do briefly allude to that with one of the characters' names in
That's
Brisco.
funny.
Yeah,
like I did not watch that show. That was not a show for young Jen.
Yeah, the same with, like, Lonesome Dove or something.
Lonesome Dove actually is really good.
Okay, well, I mean, it didn't appeal to my teenage ness. I mean,
yeah, sure. Like, I did not watch it as a teenager. I watched it many years later because I was like, oh, I hear this TV miniseries is really good, and I watched it and I was like, damn, that was really fucking good, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that as not a TV person. We also have Walker, Texas Ranger.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he kicks people in cowboy boots. That was the premise.
Yeah, and that is really kind of the show that does what Brisco County Jr. would not do, which is to, I mean, like, yes, Brisco is a white hat character, but the show was not afraid to be a little bit cynical about the United States and institutions. Right. I mean, the series finale, like, has Terry Bradshaw playing, like, a psychotic U.S. Army colonel.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of story there too. Like, there are things that can be done with that. And it's, again, like, to couch everything in role playing game terms, is like, yeah, you introduce this character who is never, like, clearly one thing or another. Yeah. And you're like, well, you have to decide what your approach is to this character. You can't just be like, oh, okay, they're just, the stock army guy. It's like, no, they're a little crazy and a little overly ambitious, and maybe a little may they play a little fast and loose with their morals because of it. Yeah, and I really feel like that's not something that Chuck Norris is going to be comfortable doing on a show. Like, yeah, like a moral gray area, because Brisco County isn't lecturing anyone, despite what the AV Club would have you believe. Like, he doesn't. Yeah. He isn't this, like, stalwart who just kind of steamrolls over indigenous people and moralizes at them. Like, he's an imperfect, or rather, I'd say that he isn't a singularly successful character. But, he does have the strength of his convictions, even if he isn't, it doesn't mean that he wins all the time or he wins handily, but, he does have the strength of his convictions. Yeah, like, he's a good guy, but because, he's played by Bruce Campbell, and Bruce Campbell has never been a guy, like, unwilling to look silly or put himself in, like, a farcical situation. Like, he will absolutely roll with it. Yeah, like, some days you're going to get your ass handed to you. That's just kind of the way it goes. Yeah, and, the way that you can tell if you're going to be on board with the show, like, if you have a problem with a show where there are many, many, many scenes of basically Mexican standoffs and the heroes kind of, like, glancing at each other and grudgingly putting up their hands because the bad guy's gotten the drop on them for the time being, like, you'll know if that show is for you or not. Like, it's a show where guys take dozens of bare-knuckle punches to the face. Yeah. Like, just constantly. Like, these, I hate to think of Brisco and Bowler, like, in their 40s or 50s. They would probably have CTE. But it's a fucking TV show. Like, that's what you do in a Western. Like, there's going to be, like, heavy bare knuckle punches to the face, like, repeatedly in a fight.
It's not going to be like realistic fighting. It's exciting.
Yeah, well, even that, it's more like stunt fighting. It isn't just like, oh, this is the fastest way to kill this person. It's like someone's going to get thrown through a window. Someone's going to get, the drop on someone else.
You break a chair over a guy's head, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I mean, it's more fun and cinematic.
Yeah, exactly. And this is kind of funny, like looking at the other struggling show of the 93 to 94 season, Sequest DSV on NBC.
I don't like the water.
I actually watched that, and I think, like the rest of the American TV audience, wandered away bored after a while.
Yeah, it didn't make an impression on me.
Yeah, but the other big hit shows, Lois and Clark, never watched that. I'm not into Superman.
Right.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
I'm aware of it as a cultural touchstone, yes.
Yeah. Saved by the Bell, college years. Beverly Hills 90210. That was not a show that I fucked with at all at the time. Followed by Melrose Place.
Yeah. I think if you're listening to this podcast, those shows probably weren't in your wheelhouse either.
Yeah, like not really my flavor. Of course, you had The Simpsons, which I was a devoted viewer of. 7 and 7:30 on the affiliates.
Yep.
For many years. Oh, there's your favorite, Tim, Herman's Head.
Yeah?
How long did that one last?
Like 4 seasons or something.
Did it?
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Oh, I'll be damned. And also In Living Color. I did fuck with In Living Color.
Yeah, In Living Color was great.
Wow, Paula Poundstone had her own show.
Huh. She employ any kids on that?
She kept it within the family.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Oh, Hearts of Fire, R.I.P. Marky Post.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez, wasn't that with John Ritter?
I don't remember.
Yeah, they both passed away since. Oh, damn. Yeah. Do you remember the Mommies?
Yeah, I think it was trying to like counter-program to Home Improvement. You remember that show?
I do remember Home Improvement. I did not watch Home Improvement, though. I know everybody else did.
Yeah, I did. I mean, what else is I going to watch?
You also had, later on, the 9 o'clock block. This is what would be going up against the X-Files, Married with Children.
Mm-hmm.
That's a favorite. Murphy Brown.
Mm-hmm. She got an abortion, didn't she?
Yeah, that's all anybody remembers about that show. There's a chick who got an abortion. Roseanne.
Yeah.
Which, that was actually like a pretty groundbreaking show for his time.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
It's kind of too bad that Roseanne is an insane person now.
Yeah, but John Goodman has done nothing but, spin gold since then.
Yeah, unimpeachable, that guy. The guy from True Stories. Yeah, Roseanne led into Coach.
Why anyone would watch Coach, I don't even know.
You got me. Craig T. Nelson, another right-wing dickhead.
Yeah, we aren't going to do an episode about Coach, sorry.
No. You also had, on Wednesdays, you had on ABC, Home Improvement, followed by Grace Under Fire. Remember Brett Butler?
Yeah, the baseball player.
That was a show where, I think because of her substance abuse problems, she kind of threw away the success of that. But the one that I actually watched at 9 p.m. on NBC Tuesdays was the John Larroquette Show, because I was a fan of his from Night Court.
Yeah, Dan Fielding.
Yep, exactly.
Fielding.
that was a critically well-regarded show that not a lot of people watched.
Right. Well,
so I don't think it lasted. And then, of course, on ABC of Matlock.
I don't think I was the target audience for that either.
No.
Yeah.
Ooh, and then the 10 p.m. block, we get real edgy. We got Northern Exposure, a critical and fan favorite.
I don't think I got that channel.
Yeah, I was not. You didn't get CBS?
Maybe if we just did the rabbit ears and the wind was right.
The other big controversial show of 1994, NYPD Blue.
Dennis Franz's ass.
Dennis Franz's hairy butt.
Yeah, it's no Homicide though. Homicide, chef's kiss. That is brilliant police drama.
Homicide is a really good fucking show.
Yeah, because it's character drama with the veneer of police work.
Yeah, and then the stalwart hanger-on L.A. Law.
Didn't watch it.
But yeah, that was a big, huge hit in the 80s and early 90s, I guess. Picket
so this
Fences.
Has been us, reading TV Guide.
Picket Fences on CBS. The Commish. I don't even know what the fuck that show was about, even though I've heard of it. And then
that was Michael Chiklis. Bobby Hill did an impression of him. That's all. That's what you're gonna get.
I'll take your word for it.
I remember being a good show.
Think, huh?
I remember it being good.
Yeah, it was 10 p.m. It was past my bedtime, so
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think we can say pretty conclusively that The Adventures of Brisco County Jr. was a real outlier in the primetime lineup of 1993 to 1994.
Right, and since I want to say, I don't think you're going to see anything on network TV like Brisco County. It was a mashup of so many different genre influences that didn't just use those as like a punching bag to say, to point out, tropes and congratulate, the viewer and jerk them off for like recognizing things that have happened.
Yeah,
as we've kind of become accustomed to.
Yeah, like the kind of, boy, isn't this shit lame now approach.
Yeah, but instead it built on those things and it created something that was, pretty singular and unique. And we didn't even talk about, Comet the horse. Because one of the things they mentioned is, Bowler isn't Briscoe's sidekick. Comet is Briscoe's sidekick.
Yes.
And it is, again, to point out how, they'll make a joke but not really, linger on it. He has the same relationship with his horse as, in Star Wars with, Chewbacca or R2. It's it's talking horse, and of course, Briscoe understands whatever the horse is saying, or he thinks he does.
Yeah, and this horse seems to have a peculiarly involved intelligence, which I assume that Briscoe probably noticed when he purchased this horse.
Right.
Again, the horse was...
Or, who rescued who, right?
Yeah, Comet has one of those stickers on his ass, just with horseshoes instead of paw prints. Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's a overwritten minor character that becomes endearing.
Well, of course, this was catnip to young Jen, who loved horses. And
being a horse girl.
You know what I realized, watching the show again?
Yeah.
Is that color, that really red chestnut with just a little bit of chrome, not the full blaze, but a nice stripe, or kind of like a star and stripe, and 3 white socks. Mm-hmm. It's the Secretariat color.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite horse colors, and I think it's because of this show.
They're the roots of the show, run deep, and their influences are, they are cast. They're cast pretty far.
I literally commissioned a model painted red chestnut, 3 white socks, and a small blaze.
Yeah, why not? That's a cool horse.
Shit right there. And
because if you figured, characters on TV, archetypes being, sort of modern mythology, you want a totem of this character that you respond to.
Yeah, and, I just love that really bright red chestnut. And as I said, the horse was billed as being played, Comet, playing himself. Yeah. Comet is Comet, but he was played by 4 different horses. The picture horse, the close-up horse, was named Stripe, and he did all the things like moving his lips, nodding his head, pawing his hoof.
Was he the one that broke the ropes when they're tied to the railroad tracks?
So that would have been Stripe. The horse that Bruce Campbell rode in long shots was called Leadbelly. Mm-hmm. I assume because he played a mean blues guitar in his spare
Of course.
time.
Can you imagine playing the slide guitar with the horseshoes?
With a hoof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's perfect. You got the built-in slide.
Yeah. So, yes, multiple horses, but also a formative horse character for young Jen.
Right. And also, too, like I was saying, how minor characters get their own little moments. There is a moment of John Aston. We never bothered to learn his character's name.
Professor Wickwire.
Yeah. Professor, Emmett Doc Farnsworth.
Hell, I forgot he was in the fucking show, and I love John Aston because he also played Judge Harry Stone's stepdad / real dad in Night Court.
Yeah, or for a real deep cut, he was Gomez Adams. But yeah,
right.
There's a scene
for the Nick at Night crew.
Right, yeah.
I fucking watched more Nick at Night than I did network TV, to be honest.
It was novel for the time. Why not? Like, where else are you going to see, Laurel and Hardy shorts?
But no, the really formative show for me, literally at this time, 93 to 94, was Get Smart on Nick at Night. I fucking love Get Smart.
Yeah. For me, it's Laurel and Hardy and Three Stooges. That is, just, if you're a boy of a certain age, you can't not watch that. It's perfect for it. That's ideally,
the Laurel and Hardy shit, holds up. I mean, there's a reason that people, if you go back and you watch, old, black and white comedy of that era, you will laugh your ass off.
Yeah, it's great stuff. And, hey, if you go back and watch vintage television from the early 90s, you'll probably do that too. But just one thing that I wanted to point out, just a funny moment that isn't, part of our, bigger argument that we're making here. Just a moment between Comet and John Aston where they're playing chess. It is John Aston playing chess with a horse. But of course, Comet, moves his lips, and John Aston's like, oh, okay, so you're playing horse takes bishop. Yeah.
And of course, the horse is going to call the knight a horse.
Yeah, it's not a knight, it's the horse. But if you're a horse, you're like, that's the best piece. Obviously.
I know it was always my favorite piece.
Well, yeah, I mean, representation in chess is important. So for a horse, it's good to have heroes identify with.
What a good boy.
Right. So Bly gets defeated partway through. He gets imprisoned in the orb, a MacGuffin I'd completely forgotten about. But just that scene where he also reveals, oh yeah, by the way, I'm from the year 2506. Just what the fuck else are they going to put in this show? Yeah. And that isn't even as far in the future as they go. They go another 3,000 years in the future for a later episode when Bly comes back, and you're just like, what is off the board at this point with the show?
Yeah, there's a naked chick from the year 5000 who drops in.
Yeah, so I could go for that. I don't care what year she's from.
I don't care if she's a terror from the year 5000.
Right. Yeah.
That's pretty much Tim's dating history right there.
Oh yeah, I have terrible taste in women, but Jen, you know that. Yeah. So that this.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Tim.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, keep in mind too that I'm watching the show, I'm, playing the Ninjas and Super Spies role-playing game, which is itself just a kitchen sink, ridiculous action game. It's from the same system that had, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and that also has, and a fellow, podcast that, I think I've mentioned before, Mega Dumbcast, that does just an Asperger's level, a dissection of Palladium books. They, as I do, hold the Transdimensional Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles source book in high regard because it is a fantastic source of just so many wild ideas.
We really need to be honest as a society with how much we rely on the heroic unpaid labor of the autism spectrum community, because honestly, where would most of us be in this age of highly specialized, individualized entertainment without the autistic community?
Without an autist there doing the work. But so he I'm
not even fucking joking.
No, yeah. He holds it. Yeah,
completely deadpan.
Yeah, one of his favorite books because there is a lot of garbage from Palladium. But it is all a particular flavor of garbage that if you're, getting back to my junk food analogy from earlier, if you're a little kid, you're kind of tuned into that. You're like, I like this kind of junk.
It's kind of like how, like, as a 15-year-old, I didn't realize, like, how cringe it was to read those, like, R.A. Salvatore Dark Elf trilogy books. Like, for me, that was caviar, man.
Yeah, just the sheer, breadth of ideas that you're going to get about, like, well, why can't I play, a dinosaur who, is also a mutant and, I don't know, has superpowers. You're like, throw it. Yeah, it's like, you go to the frozen yogurt place and you're like, yeah, chocolate and gummy bears and sprinkles and, raspberry icing and chocolate and caramel. And you're like, that sounds disgusting. But you're like, I am a child with no taste. This tastes brilliant.
As a kid, you don't know, like, what a bad idea bubblegum ice cream is.
Yeah. Then you grow up and you're just like, oh, I cannot go back.
Yeah, I remember getting that from Baskin Robbins, like a scoop of that, and my dad especially just being like, ugh.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I was like, I don't understand it. This is the best thing ever. And as an adult, I'm like, oh God.
Oh, it's Robitussin with hard bits in it. Great.
It's
yeah.
terrible.
So, but
and I'm sure that R.A. Salvatore Dark Elf shit is like the bubblegum ice cream of literature.
Yeah.
Like, I won't even go back and revisit them to find out. Like, just like I don't think I'll ever rewatch Night Court because it must just remain perfect in my mind.
Right. Yeah. You don't want it to be one of those shows that it turns out without you realizing you've outgrown it.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely true of The Nanny. No disrespect to Fran, but
yeah,
that is not a good show.
You didn't know any better.
I did not. I really didn't.
Yeah, so us bemoaning the one season of Brisco County. On the other hand, there's the potential second season that sounds like it would have been just terrible. The other thing is, from behind the scenes, they talked about it was a 7-day shoot per episode. But it was 7 days where, they would wrap they'd wrap an episode on Sunday night, and then Monday morning, they go into shooting the next episode. And to hear,
TV, baby.
To hear the cast and, the production crew talk about it, when they found out they were canceled, it was met with an immense sense of relief. Yeah. Like, I can get my life back.
Yeah, that's exactly how Bruce Campbell puts it in his autobiography. And and of course it's like it's like a celebrity autobiography written by an extremely funny guy. So it is light and breezy, but that is especially true of the Brisco County Jr. episode, where it's plain that Bruce Campbell has real affection and love for this show, like it is his favorite role. But that's a hell of a light and breezy chapter because you can tell that to him it's like a blur. And when it was over, he did kind of breathe a sigh of relief. He's like, oh my God, like I'm not like on a TV production schedule anymore. I can breathe.
Yeah, because one of I think your favorite actress who played Dixie would talk about, you do like bit parts in other like, crime dramas where it's a 9-day shoot and it's people, talking on opposite sides of a desk. Like, you aren't doing, a period action on location movie on, TV show shot on film with like, stunts and costumes and all this other shit. Like, it was a lot of work to make Brisco County Jr. work. And that we even got a season, even like this kind of janky 18 episode, 23 episode, 28 episode season, that we got that at all is kind of a miracle.
Yeah. And I feel like even in more welcoming times, so like take it 10 years in the future, 2003, I feel like Brisco County would have been like, again, beloved, maybe 2-season show on like a cable network, and take it, another 10 or 15 years, like 2 seasons on Netflix, and it probably would have looked more like the pilot because, the pilots always look better than the actual production. Like, you do notice the shift between the pilot and the first regular season episode. Like, you go from like very nice like feature kind of lighting to like TV show lighting. It's like a lot brighter.
It's not as big a drop off as Mantis. We'll say that.
No, they as faithful listeners know, they like Fox really fucking did Mantis dirty. I don't think they had any confidence in it. I mean, and like Tim very convincingly made the case, like, Brisco County Jr. is not just like a white dude show. Like, there is like a diverse cast and like people of color in like an important side roles, but same network, Fox, Mantis, like, like the all black cast and like the overt political content it was a bridge too far for them, especially
a little spicy, Jen would say.
Yeah, especially like for a network that was also kind of grappling with In Living Color.
Yeah. I mean, you can't make a show that is nominally about the LA riots and just like air that and think everyone's going to be on board with it.
Yeah. So, and yeah, like it's fucking unfair because, you heard it if you listen to our episode on Mantis, like there was a lot of strong shit in that show and like they did not keep it for the regular series run. Like Brisco County was able to keep its essential character for much or all of that season.
Yeah.
But Netflix would have canceled it in the second season.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, my takeaway from it is that, yes, it does still hold up. We've gone over all the things that we like about it. Dixie notwithstanding. Sorry, Jen, apparently. But, I mean, my takeaway from it ultimately is that nothing good can last.
That's true. Nothing gold can stay. Least of all, a primetime network show starring Bruce Campbell.
A primetime sci-fi western.
Yeah. Or is I've seen it described on the internet, a weird western.
Yeah, I mean, Weird West fits. This was 3 years before the Deadlands RPG, which kind of fed from the same trough. That had a lot of great game mechanics in it.
I was nerdy as a teen, but believe it or not that nerdy.
Well, this would have been around the same time as like the like Werewolf the Apocalypse and Vampire the Masquerade, that World of Darkness.
Yeah, this is where I start like hitting the fade and audition.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, it was a point where people were moving beyond role playing as just Dungeons and Dragons. People were adding like more thematic quirks to it, and in particular, Deadlands used a deck of cards as one of the game mechanics, which is pretty innovative.
When did Vampire the Masquerade drop?
I want to say that would have been earlier 90s. I want to say like maybe 92. So it would have been like around the same time as Brisco County. But, since we're talking about like steampunk and like cynical, retelling of common tropes, like, Scream, that didn't happen until like 96. Steampunk stuff, wasn't really happening around till like 99. So Brisco County was much earlier than all that.
Yeah. A true forerunner.
Yeah. Vampire Masquerade is from 1991.
There you go. I'm going to get back to watching more episodes of The Adventures of Brisco County Jr.
Yeah, because they thread a lot of season arc stuff through a lot of the episodes, and if you miss an episode, you're suddenly like, well, how do we get here? But
exactly.
Just having all these parts come together, it's a really rewarding experience, and I like all the little jokes in it, and that it is a collection of all these fun influences. It's a continual. It continues to be a joy to watch, which, if you can find it, I think it's on Amazon streaming, some other services. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Just pirate it. You won't regret it.
Yeah, you can do that too.
Fuck Amazon.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, they got enough money.
Hey everyone, it's Jen. If you like that, why not check out our Patreon? We're at patreon.com/haveyouseentthis. And for a pledge of as low as $2 a month, you get a whole 2 extra bonus episodes a month. So check us out there at patreon.com/haveyouseentthis. Thanks again for listening, everyone.